New Year's Eve at my family's house was the one time of year where everything felt both chaotic and comforting. My mom would be bustling around the kitchen. Dad would be fiddling with the sound system. And the smell of Mom's famous lasagna filled the air. But amidst the laughter, food, and countdowns, there was one tradition we all took seriously: the regret jar. It was an odd tradition, but it started with Grandma decades ago. Every year, each family member wrote down their biggest regret from the past year, folded it up, and dropped it into her old glass jar. At midnight, we'd open the jar and read them out loud, anonymously. Grandma always said it was about starting the new year with a clean slate, a way to face your mistakes and let them go. Over the years, it became a sacred ritual in our family, but this year things felt different. There was an unspoken tension hanging over us, one you couldn't quite put your finger on but could feel in every glance, every pause in conversation. Daniel, my older brother, was the first to give it away. Normally he'd be cracking jokes, stealing extra helpings of lasagna, or challenging me to some silly game. Tonight, though, he barely said a word. He just sat there, staring at his plate, his shoulders hunched like he was carrying the weight of the world. Mom kept throwing him nervous glances, her smile forced and her laughter hollow. Dad, meanwhile, kept his distance, refilling his drink more often than usual, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Even Emily, my younger sister, who usually had her nose buried in her phone, seemed uneasy. It was like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something to break. When it came time to write our regrets, no one moved right away. The only sound was the scratching of Emily's pen against paper, her face pinched in concentration. I stared at my blank slip of paper, trying to think of something safe to write. "I regret not saving more money," I finally scribbled. It felt shallow, but it was the kind of regret that wouldn't stir up trouble. One by one, we dropped our slips into the jar, and by the time it was Daniel's turn, the room felt like it was holding its breath. His hand shook as he folded his paper and slipped it into the jar. He didn't look at any of us as he sat back down, his jaw tight. The countdown came and went, and as the fireworks lit up the sky outside, we began reading the regrets. Most of them were lighthearted or predictable. Mom regretted burning the Thanksgiving turkey. Emily regretted spending too much money on clothes. Dad, in his usual vague way, regretted not being around enough. When it was my turn, I read my generic regret about money, and no one even reacted. But then it was Daniel's. Her eyes scanned the words, and her face froze. She looked up at Daniel, then at Dad, her voice barely above a whisper. "What is this?" Mom shot up from her seat, her voice trembling. "Read it." Emily's voice cracked as she read it out loud. "I regret helping Dad hide the truth about Mom's accident." The silence was deafening. Then all at once the room erupted. "What truth?" Mom's voice shook with fear and anger, her hands gripping the table. "It wasn't like that," Dad started, but Daniel cut him off. "She deserves to know, Dad. We've kept this secret long enough." And then it all came spilling out. 3 years ago, Mom had been in a car accident. We'd all believed it was an icy road, just bad luck. But Daniel revealed the truth. Dad had been drinking that night. He was the one driving, not Mom. And when the accident happened, he panicked. He and Daniel decided to lie, saying Mom had been driving because she wouldn't remember much due to the shock. Emily burst into tears, yelling at both of them for lying to all of us. I sat there, stunned, replaying every conversation we'd had about that night, wondering how we'd missed the signs. But it was Mom who broke the chaos. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared at Dad, her voice quiet but firm. "Is this true?" Dad nodded, his face pale. "Yes, I was drinking. I made a mistake, and I've regretted it every day since." Her expression softened and her voice broke. "That's why you quit drinking, isn't it? That's why you've been sober all this time." He nodded again. "I almost lost you, Helen. I couldn't live with myself if it happened again." The room fell silent. The weight of his words hung in the air, and slowly, the anger began to ebb away. Mom stepped closer to Dad, her eyes filled with tears. "You should have told me. But you stopped. You made a change. That matters." She turned to us, her voice steadier now. "We've all made mistakes, but holding on to this anger won't undo what's happened. What matters is that we're here, together, alive. And if that accident made your father the man he is today, then maybe something good came out of it after all." Her words broke something in me. I'd been so angry, so shocked, but now I saw the truth. Dad had made a terrible mistake, but he'd spent every day since trying to make amends. As the clock struck midnight, we raised our glasses, not in celebration of a perfect year, but in gratitude for a second chance. We weren't perfect, but we were a family, and that was enough. For the soul, regret is a heavy burden, but it's also a teacher. Mistakes don't define us. What we do after does. Let this new year be a reminder to let go of the past, embrace growth, and move forward with gratitude. Life is messy, but it's also a gift. Let's cherish it.